Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're tackling something huge. We're setting out to trace the massive 2,000-year history of how Western music evolved into the tracks we listen to today. From the very first, primitive attempts to scribble down a melody, all the way to the digital files living right in our pockets, it's an absolutely fascinating story of human ingenuity. Let's jump right in. So, how exactly did we get from ancient Greek tombstones to Napster? It's a wildly huge question. I mean, think about it. For almost all of human history, music was this fleeting, blink-and-you-miss-it live experience. If you weren't physically there in the room to hear it, it was gone forever. Today, practically any song ever recorded is instantly available to anyone, anywhere. Getting from unrecorded live jams to universal digital access was quite the ride. To make sense of this massive timeline, we're going to navigate through 4 clear eras: capturing the sound, building the blueprint, the Beethoven revolution, and finally, the technology boom. Think of this as our map so we don't get lost along the way.
Okay, kicking things off with era number 1, capturing the sound. Before we could even dream of complex symphonies or pop songs, humanity faced one glaring problem. How on earth do you record and preserve music so it actually outlives the person playing it?
The earliest solutions were just brilliantly simple, but they laid the groundwork for everything. Around 100 AD, we get the Psycholos epitaph. This is the oldest known complete notated song, where the Greeks literally carved alphabet symbols with little timing marks onto a tombstone. Pretty amazing, right? Fast forward to 600 AD, and the church develops what are called neumes to help monks remember chants. Then, boom, around 1000 AD, we hit a massive breakthrough. A monk named Guido de Arezzo draws a single red line to indicate a fixed pitch. That was the invention of the stave, which is literally the revolutionary foundation for the sheet music we still use right now.
What's really fascinating here is how these neumes actually functioned in everyday life. They were essentially early notation, these little flecks and squiggles floating above the lyrics to show if the pitch was going up or down. It was a highly practical fix to a very real problem. Monks were out there trying to memorize impossibly large catalogs of church plain chants entirely by heart. Now, these squiggles didn't give you the exact precise note, but they gave you the shape of the melody. They were an absolute lifesaver as a memory aid.
And that brings us to a super important number, 1501. That was the year Ottaviano Petrucci published the very first book containing a large collection of printed polyphonic music. Why is this such a big deal? Well, just like the printing press revolutionized books, printing music sparked a massive exchange of compositions across Europe. Suddenly, music wasn't just trapped in a single monastery or isolated royal court. It could be shared, studied, and played basically anywhere.
That explosion of shared music leads us perfectly into our second era, building the blueprints. This is where brilliant composers took those written notes and started laying down the strict structural rules of modern music. The absolute game changer of this era is polyphony, which basically means multiple, independent melodic lines being performed at the exact same time. Instead of just everyone singing one single flat chant, the Renaissance brought this expanding harmonic richness. Composers started weaving different vocal lines together, creating these structurally complex, gorgeous tapestries of sound that completely leveled up what music could actually do. And that growing complexity gave birth to the next major leap. In 1607, we get the birth of opera with Claudio Monteverdi's L'Orfeo. Opera was this incredibly exciting new form of dramatic storytelling, simply because it took music, drama, poetry, costumes, and stage design and smashed them all together into one spectacular event. It wasn't just about playing the right notes anymore. It was about intense emotional expression and driving a theatrical narrative. Now, by the 18th century, musical structure was getting highly standardized, and a lot of that was actually due to the physical spaces where it was being played. Take the Hanover Square Rooms in London, for example. This is exactly where composer Joseph Haydn performed symphonies for paying public audiences. To hold the attention of everyday concertgoers who were buying tickets, Haydn standardized the massive 4-movement symphony. He really shifted music from being just aristocratic background noise to a fully engaging public event. To keep those audiences hooked, Haydn relied on a strict hierarchy of cadences. Think of these literally like musical punctuation marks, commas, colons, and full stops. Just as grammar guides you through a written paragraph, classical composers built highly logical musical journeys. They used open phrases that end in a weak cadence, kind of like asking a question, and then closed phrases ending in strong cadences that decisively provide the answer. It made the music incredibly satisfying and super easy for the audience to follow along.
But hey, rules are meant to be broken, which brings us to Era 3, the Beethoven Revolution. This is the dramatic climax of our story, where those established, polite, classical rules are totally shattered to inject raw, unfiltered human emotion into the music. We're talking about a massive cultural shift here. Music dramatically moved away from the classical era's obsession with balance, control, and aristocratic patronage, and it just exploded into the Romantic era. Now it was fueled by raw emotion, rebellion, and composers operating as fiercely independent freelance artists. This whole shift was heavily inspired by the ideals of the French Revolution, and its absolute greatest champion was, without a doubt, Ludwig van Beethoven. The most crucial thing to understand about Beethoven is his attitude, which is perfectly summed up in this blistering letter he wrote to his patron Prince Lichnowsky after they got into a huge fight. He wrote, "What you are by circumstance and birth. What I am through myself. Of Beethoven's, there is only one." Talk about a mic drop, right? It was a powerful declaration of independence. He permanently shifted the paradigm from the composer being just a servant to the aristocracy to the composer being a revered, individualistic genius. And the crazy thing is, his music completely backed up that swagger. He drastically expanded the length of the symphony. His third symphony was longer than literally anything before it. He threw in these shocking, violent dissonances that actually confused musicians at first. He fundamentally changed orchestration by adding a full chorus and solo voices in his ninth symphony, and he started using new instruments like trombones and the piccolo. But above all, he portrayed intense, turbulent, personal emotion. He used his art as a means of profound self-expression, and by doing so, he changed classical music forever. Beethoven's influence essentially opened the floodgates for the rest of the Romantic era. Composers started writing what was called absolute music, music that transcended words to express deep spiritual ideals. We also start seeing these intensely dramatic art songs, or Lieder, popping up. A flawless example is Franz Schubert's supernatural masterpiece, The Earl King. It uses just a solo voice and a piano to tell this terrifying, emotionally exhausting story of a father and son being chased by a mythical reaper. Music could now represent every single shade of human emotion. And that incredible emotional range was eventually captured, bottled up, and distributed globally. Which brings us to our fourth and final era, the technology boom. In the 20th century, a technological explosion completely liberated music from the concert hall. Let's just trace this domino effect real quick. In 1877, the phonograph made music a repeatable, recorded experience for the first time ever. By the 1920s, radio broadcasting was beaming that music direct feed into people's living rooms. Then, jump to 1981. MTV launches and makes the visual component central to the music experience. Finally, Napster and digital files come along in 1999 and fundamentally upend the entire global economy of music. Now, what's crucial here is that this early recording boom coincided exactly with the birth of jazz and blues. In the early 20th century, African American traditions blended with European harmony in places like New Orleans. This created entirely new styles that brought improvisation front and center as a key artistic element. That fusion profoundly influenced pretty much all the popular music that followed. But technology didn't just capture sound, it literally created new sounds. Enter the electric guitar in the 1930s. By amplifying the instrument so it could finally be heard over a loud band, it allowed for totally new styles of playing. This aggressive, amplified sound quickly became the defining, rebellious voice of rock and roll in the 1950s, allowing artists like Elvis to connect directly with youth culture and drive immense social change. This whole spirit of technological experimentation culminated in the 1970s Bronx. That's where DJ Kool Herc started experimenting with massive sound systems, using rhythmic loopings from records to birth hip-hop. Right around the same time, portable, programmable electronic synthesizers were offering up entirely new, completely alien sounds. This tech experimentation went on to influence almost all modern genres. It proved that the tools we use to make music fundamentally changed the music itself. Which leaves us with a massive question as we look to the future. As we've just seen, the rules of music have constantly been rewritten, from a monk's neumes to Beethoven's symphonies, right down to digital hip-hop loops. So, what exactly will the next revolution sound like? As artificial intelligence and global digital collaboration keep evolving, it is absolutely thrilling to imagine how they're going to shape the next 2,000 years of human expression. Thanks for joining me on this epic explainer today.